Again, welcome everyone to the Practitioner Panel for Dual Enrollment 24. I hope your lunch has been good and probably short, but thankful for your for joining us today for the conference and most definitely for our Practitioner Panel. We have a wide variety of talent here that we're excited to share with you. So welcome everyone. During the session, we invite you to place questions for the panelists in the Q&A chat box. The panelists have prepared some questions in advance, guided by your submissions during the registration, and we'll address the additional questions at the end as time permits. A huge thank you to our panelists for participating in today's session. I'll now turn the mic over to our facilitator, Janet Boyle. You can begin this discussion.
Thank you so much, Aaron. Welcome everybody to this session. We're very fortunate to have two different perspectives represented in our practitioner panel, both the higher education perspective as well as the high school perspective. In my role as a director of the Rural Early College Network in Indiana, I am fortunate that I've had my feet in both worlds. I was a professor for 13 years and in K-12 as well. And then the last 13 years have been working at CEL, which is an education nonprofit based at the University of Indianapolis. I'd now like to turn it over to Jennifer to introduce herself.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Nichols. I'm the Vice President of Educational Partnerships and Enrollment Management at Gaston College in North Carolina.
Litsa.
Good afternoon. My name is Litsa Echeverria Rubio, and I am the Director of the Dual Enrollment Program at the University of Florida.
Great, thank you. And how about Matt?
Hey everyone, my name is Matt Bristow Smith. I am a practicing high school principal in Edgecombe County, North Carolina. We are in rural North Carolina. We're in a high poverty area. I've been the principal here for 10 years. I've been an educator in Edgecombe County for 26 years. And so I could not be more excited to be here to talk about dual enrollment.
Great, thank you. And Michael?
Greetings, everyone. I'm Michael Werner from Mounds View Public Schools. I'm the post-secondary planning coordinator for our district, which has approximately 11,000 students in 2 different high schools. And we are about 15 minutes directly north of both Minneapolis and St. Paul. So we are a suburban district.
Great. So we have great representation here from around the country. What we're going to do today in our panel is I have a series of questions to pose to the panelists, and we're going to try to represent both the high school and the higher education perspectives on each question. So my first question to the group is, what best prepares students to be successful in dual enrollment classes? And I'd like to start from the high school point of view first. So Matt, would you go first, please?
I sure will. And I think that is a great question because it asks us to think about what are the foundational skills that students need and what are the structures that schools need to have in place to make sure that students who are interested in higher education, who want to engage in dual enrollment courses, are able to do that in the high schools that they attend. I will share that I think that the community college environment and the dual enrollment environment has a lot of variety and diversity to it. I sometimes think that it has something for everyone. And yet, when you're thinking about readiness for perhaps taking a CTE path, that might be a little different than students that might be wanting to take prerequisite college classes like English 111 or Math 171. As the principal of this early college, one of the things that we really just spend a lot of time on is thinking about, are we helping our students to have the foundational skills in place, academic and also social emotional skills, in order to be able to qualify to take higher ed classes and then also to be successful in them without needing additional remediation. So we look really strongly not just at readiness to take dual enrollment courses, but looking backwards 2 years, 3 years, what are the structures that we need to have in place to make sure that math and English and writing and speaking, and then also the social emotional skills like advocating for yourself and writing an email, that all of those kind of foundational pieces are in place so that when the student is primed and ready to go, there's nothing to hold them back. We really are trying to keep our students out of the remediation cycle, which can sometimes feel like a vortex. And really trying to key them up with all of those competencies that they need to be able to walk into a classroom and to hold their own. So I'll probably pause there just to kind of let that settle for just a moment. I think foundational academic and social readiness to engage in college classes doesn't begin chronologically. It does require schools to scaffold those supports, really 8th grade, 9th grade, 10th grade.
Thank you. And we all were nodding our heads, so I think you're preaching to this choir. So Michael, what could you piggyback on from your
Yeah.
perspective?
Matt really presented a lot of very valid points, and I think there are ones that all of us would like to use in a comprehensive manner. A couple of things that we do here in Mounds View Public Schools is we have what we call a dean model, where our student to dean ratio is much lower than the national average and the state average, and that helps us build some very good collaborative relationships with students and families. And in that model, we have a chance to really have conversations with students as they come into our high schools to build a 4-year plan. And in the creation of those 4-year plans, there's a lot of conversations about aspirations beyond high school, and then working backwards, similar to what Matt had talked about, to identify what coursework makes the most sense between concurrent enrollment offerings, of which we have 15, AP offerings, and or which ones might work best to dip your toe into a post-secondary course to get a feel for what college is like. That's the biggest kind of way we can prepare students. And then we've worked very, very hard to be present at parent information sessions, registration sessions. We have communication nights and conferences to make sure that we're readily available in our career and college and post-secondary services facilities to be open to gather questions and opportunities to explain these chances that students have, and making sure that they understand the impact not only on their high school sequencing, but also their college sequencing as well.
Thank you. That's very thorough. How about the higher education perspective? Lisa, let's start with you.
Absolutely. So, from the higher education perspective, everything and anything that the high schools can do, right, to support the students, and, mirroring what Michael and Matt have shared, making sure that they have these skills needed to advocate for themselves, to be able to handle the rigor and the expectations of a dual enrollment course are definitely essential. From the our perspective, things that we do is we do make ourselves available as well to attend parent nights and dual enrollment info sessions that are had at the districts, so that we can share out with the families what the expectations are of the students at the university. We are a fully online part-time dual enrollment program. So we are, academically very rigorous. And so the expectation that our faculty and our staff have of the students, it is high. And there is no distinction within our system to differentiate an online dual enrollment student versus a traditional UF student. So our instructors have no way of knowing, A from B. So we ensure that, we have the opportunity to share out with parents and families what the expectations are. Then internally, in order to support the students that are in the program, we serve as kind of a one-stop for all of the needs that the student may have throughout the university. So they are not going out to a college to get advising. They're not going out themselves to career services or to get mental health support. We house all that within our office, and then we work a referral process to be able to get the students all of the needs that they have. So it's definitely a partnership between ensuring that the high schools are providing and are scaffolding the skills that are needed, but then as a program, understanding that there's a fine line that we're going to need to kind of all, walk to ensure that the students are going to be successful, and, definitely helping them understand not only the benefits of being successful in a dual enrollment program, but also the other side of that coin, right? What does that mean? And especially when you are starting those college GPAs and those tracking processes towards the future, that you got to be very careful in ensuring that you're doing what is going to be best for you academically.
Thank you. Jennifer, what would you like to add from your position?
I think it's hard to add onto what everyone's already said, because it's all very valid. I think in terms of college readiness for high school students, that it's more than just about what a test score is or a GPA, because I've definitely seen students who have great GPAs, amazing GPAs, and they're not college ready when it comes to the soft skills needed to be college ready, and time management, ability to, and I don't want to say multitask, but to work the college expectations into their high school life. I think is an important part. And so just communicating that, I think, is huge. And back to, Lisa was great about talking about the partnership, because that's exactly it. It's making sure that the high school people that we partner with, that are promoting the programs, know as much about the expectations, being there, being present, attending information sessions, being there for parent nights, all the things, right? That's already been said. But, I've also seen a student with a not so great GPA be the ideal student. Maybe just because they had a rough ninth grade year doesn't mean that just because they don't have a GPA come their junior year, they're not college ready. They might have grown up a lot in that 10th grade year, and they're ready for, and Matt referenced the CTE is a great place to start for that. So, so I think it's hard. It's not a one size fits all model for, if you do this and check these boxes, you're college ready, because that's not exactly true. For it's so student dependent, which I think is where the partnerships with the high school matters, because they are the ones who see these students every day, and we're just getting to know them.
So true. Thank you. This next question is for Michael and Matt to give us some more detail about the kinds of supports that are provided to help students. So if you could talk about some specific examples of academic supports as well as emotional, and then the college readiness piece. So what kinds of supports do you all provide? Let's start with Michael on this one.
Certainly, at our two high schools, all of the students get in-depth information during the registration process about what courses they're eligible to take at what grade level. And we've worked very hard to make a combination of recommendations at the discipline level. So English teachers spend some time talking to their English classes about what options students have available to them the next academic year. And the goal, I'm confident it happens in most of the classrooms, is to have a fairly individualized conversation. Because Janet, the work you've produced and submitted, it could be considered A level. And Aaron, you could have been producing and submitting the same level and A level, but I've been having to push you, cajole you, and sit you down and keep you after school to get your papers in, Aaron, where Janet has been way ahead of the curve, getting all of them in, seeking feedback, working through all of these things. And then that echoes some of the conversations and some of the points people have made earlier, and saying, just because on paper you have all of the qualifications and you meet the eligibility requirements, let's have some conversations about the non-cognitive factors that play an equally important role in being successful in college level coursework. And so kind of empowering our teachers and our deans to have conversations, and also really bringing in students and families and saying, every semester I've had to do a lot of work connecting with you to make sure that you get your assignments in, double checking that you've gotten that midterm assessment in that you asked for an extension on. Those don't happen when you take some of these higher level courses, and going from there. I think we've done as a district a really good job of also having our concurrent enrollment be part of our culture. And so students and families have an awareness of what this is, going all the way back into 8th grade in preparation for registering for their senior or their freshman year in high school. We know, of course, a lot of the recent research shows that this should be pushed back probably even to sixth grade. But our offices do presentations at all of the middle schools to discuss what these different options are and get them to understand some of the language and the lingo. So we have a lot of acronyms in education, and so we spend some time defining some of those things. We've created glossaries. We've done some of these different things. We've brought in our partner is Anoka Ramsey, and so they have hired a transition advisor who meets with almost all of the classes and comes in and gives presentations and talks about just what Lisa and Jennifer had mentioned about starting a college transcript, about where do you get the resources, how do you go about them, how do you advocate, and does those things, but also is present for some of the different presentations we have. And parents will, get their kids to sign up on the calendar right then and there. And so those are some really good examples of things that we found successful. Obviously, every year we have to reiterate and over communicate, because it lands with some groups. Other groups we need to do a lot more on. So I did a presentation last week where we translated all of the documents into 4 different languages and had our liaisons present who could serve as translators and to help kind of answer some of the more unique questions that might fit different groups in our system.
That's excellent. Thank you. Matt, what can you add from your high school in terms of some specific supports?
Sure. And I think I'd also like, if you don't mind, let me try to connect a couple dots. We've got a question in the chat from Lauren. And Lauren asks about gaps that we perceive as opportunities for improvement and or a need for more collaboration between the high school partners, students, parents, and colleges. And so my response I'd like to make to your question, but also to Lauren's question in the chat. And I think that some of this goes to something that Michael said earlier about connecting with parents, and Lisa also talked about parent nights, and then Jennifer spoke about the idea that one size does not fit all. So I want to just kind of address all of those things in this response. Our early college is a 5-year model here in Edgecombe Early College High School. And I have some staff that are kind of particularly well positioned to help guide parents and students along kids' academic journeys. And so my high school counselor does a lot of the academic advising and also social emotional support on the high school side. We also have a position here in North Carolina called the College Liaison. And the College Liaison serves as kind of like my first go-to person in anything that I need to do as a high school principal working on the public school, but with the community college. And in particular, she's super helpful with course scheduling and mapping out students' growth plans for 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. And so what we really have is a team approach. And that team consists of me as the principal, my high school counselor, also our college liaison, and then every individual student at our school and his or her parent or guardian, caregiver. We meet with them every semester, face-to-face, in person. And that allows us over the course of their high school career for us to make sure that we're having an in-person experience that's not just sending home some papers or doing kind of a collective Zoom call, but it's actually in person and it's personal. Also keeps our fingers on the pulse of how kids are growing up and how their interests are changing and what their passions may be and their curiosities. And when I want to take, a carpentry class or a HVAC class, or when I want to take, Bio 110, 111, 112, it allows us to make sure that we're customizing the course offerings for what that student is currently interested in and pursuing. And sometimes that's, I want to pick up a business credential. Sometimes it's, I want to get my Associate of Sciences, not just my Associate of Arts. Sometimes I've decided to go into the military and I need a course of study to prepare me for the ASVAB. And so this is also super important because I've learned something. And this is not going to be revolutionary to anybody on the call who has teenage children, but I'm going to say this. Weirdly enough, we live under the same roof as our teenage children, and often parents and teenage children don't talk to each other about this stuff. And so schools have the unique opportunity to be conveners, to convene both the school team, but also the parent, also the child, and to have these conversations. And they're not once and done conversations. They need to be happening every semester, every year. They need to iterate. You need to know that they're going to change, and you're not creating a linear map. You're creating a plan that's kind of responsive to each child's interests and dreams. And when a child picks up an internship, or when they, attend a special event, or when they see something on TikTok that interests them, all that stuff has to factor into these really key critical conversations about what courses do I take, what credits am I trying to earn, what credentials are of interest to me, and how they connect with the world after high school and with like my career plans. So I would just emphasize that our college liaison, our high school counselor, also work in conjunction with these other partners that are at the traditional schools in our district. We call them career coaches. And so we have embedded in these traditional environments these career coaches that are also kind of the face people for the students at those schools. And I'm sure every district has their own structure, but these are folks that when they work really well together as a team can synergize around each individual child and to make sure that nobody gets lost along the way.
Thank you. That was excellent. And Matt and Michael, take a look in the chat box. There's a question specifically for Michael, and then I think there's others that you two could chime in on. So let's go to the higher ed perspective on this. So Jennifer and Lisa, what supports does your university provide in terms of dual enrollment students to help them succeed as they are proceeding through their coursework? So let's have Jennifer start with that one.
Hi. Well, as a community college, we have a number of supports that we provide. Probably the first and foremost, I think, is the fact that we have designated staff assigned to each of our schools. And so they have special office hours that they hold at those schools so that they have an opportunity to connect with the students. We have a couple of learning management platform alerts. So like when students aren't logging in, when they aren't doing the things that they need to do, in the chat, it was called a transition advisor or someone like that, like a career coach has come in and mentioned as well. This person, this liaison, this call it whatever you want, person is monitoring those based off of their caseload. So we do follow a caseload model, and I think that that's been very beneficial to the students, but also in order to connect and create relationships with the individual high schools. I'm having a hard time hearing Jennifer. Sorry about that, Connie. So as far as what we do support wise, all the things that our college has, library, writing center, learning center, all of those support services that exist for traditional college students are available for our dual enrolled students as well. But we do have these additional support staff who are designated to their schools to kind of help create a success team with their high school staff. So it's almost like we have a cheering squad, if you will, for each student. And I think that that goes a long way to being an extra level of support that maybe a traditional college student wouldn't get.
Okay, great. So Lisa, you talked about yours being an online program. So how do you reach out with supports for the students?
Absolutely. So we have, a similar caseload model with advisors that are assigned to our students. We have dedicated dual enrollment advisors within the dual enrollment office that hold advising sessions, one-on-one advising sessions with our students. That advisor is trained in what high school requirements are for graduation, as well as the plethora of majors that are offered by the university. And so they are able to support the student and help them do that tracking. We, of course, have the same, alert systems when students aren't logging in and where students aren't keeping up with the coursework. Additionally, my academic advisors are registered into the learning, platform along with the students. So the academic advisors are able to grade track and, kind of be in the class with the students as they're going through the course. And so we do what we call grade checks. We do 4 grade checks a semester where we are tracking the students and the grades that they're earning. And we have certain cutoff points where as needed, we involve the high school staff in the conversation, right? If we're reaching out to a student says, oh, yes, I know I didn't do well on exam 1, but I'm preparing for exam 2. And then we see that improvement, then, you're fine. You're doing what you're supposed to be doing as a student. But if we're seeing that trajectory not change, then we involve the high school counselor in the conversation so that they can find out what support they may need, not only at the high school level, but also what support we can provide. All of our instructors hold virtual office hours. Our TAs hold virtual office hours, and all of the same support that is available to physical UF on-campus students, libraries, tutoring centers, writing centers, they all have virtual models that are available to our students as well. And so, our students have access to those services as well.
Okay,
Mhm.
thank you. We've got some great questions in the chat, and we'll try to come to those toward the end of our session. But right now, let's focus on culture at your respective institutions. So I'm going to start with Jennifer. Jennifer, how do you foster a culture with your staff, your faculty, and then the students in terms of growing and enhancing dual enrollment classes?
Well, I definitely think from a faculty perspective, it's important that faculty feel supported when they are going out into our high schools. And so we work really hard at the beginning of every semester to kind of have like an orientation, I'll call it an orientation, even though sometimes it's repeated every term. But if you're going out, we kind of have a faculty meeting, if you will, giving you an opportunity to ask any questions. We also do meet and greets on the campuses before classes start at our high school campuses or locations, so that faculty feel comfortable about where they're going. They know who their single point of contact is at a school. We do designate a single point of contact for them, just in case they have questions about where to go and what to do. Because the more comfortable a faculty member is, the more they can just focus on the things they want to focus on, which is working with the students, focus on their curriculum, and the learning that's supposed to happen in their classroom, instead of all the other things. So we try really hard to get ahead of that, is one way that we try to do that at Gaston College.
Okay. How about students? Anything in terms of to foster that culture?
Yeah, absolutely. So again, those staff, I think, are huge for that we assign to the school, because they are on their campuses. They know who they are. They see them. They have regular office hours. Sometimes they're pulled out of classes to meet with them if things aren't going well. So these career coaches, these transition liaisons, whatever you want to call them, because I know it kind of varies per district, they're huge. They're huge for making students feel like a part of our college community. We are always encouraging students to check their college email, which does seem to be a little bit of an issue because they have their high school email too. And so I think that that's something that we keep promoting to them. We've also tried to do a few special, like we've got a few things planned in the fall for our athletics. That's going to be just our dual enrolled student night, so that we can promote that to our dual enrolled students to help them kind of get connected to the campus. Because I saw someone say in the chat that they find their high schoolers just really aren't involved with them and they don't know them very well. Sometimes you don't ask, you just say. So instead of asking a high school, hey, what days can I be there? You can be like, hey, I'm going to be on your campus this Wednesday from, 12:30 until, 2 o'clock. Any students I can meet with, or any opportunities that I have to put a table in a lunchroom, whatever it might be, just to kind of be there for students or meet with students. And over time, when you're there, they're going to embrace you being there, and they're going to use you because they realize you've got access to some important information that could really benefit them too.
Yeah. Thank you. Jennifer, or excuse me, Lisa, what could you add to that in terms of your culture and how you promote that?
Yeah, being an online program is a little bit more difficult for us because we don't have as much of the ability, to go into the high schools. We serve 22 public school districts throughout the state of Florida, and we're a very long state. And so, we do our best to foster the relationships with our high school counselors or transition counselors, career coaches, whatever it is that you want to call it at each high school. And every district, has a different name and a different process that they use for that. But we do our best to foster that relationship with that person, because they are, our eyes and ears on the ground. They are the ones that are promoting our program. They are the ones that are, kind of our boots on the ground. And so that's really from our perspective where we're gaining, the opportunity to be able to connect with the students. I mentioned, from the perspective of like our staff and our instructors don't have a way of differentiating between a dual enrollment student and a traditional student unless the student self-identifies, right? So if a student self-identifies and lets them know, I'm a high school dual enrollment student, et cetera, they are able to do that. And we have every semester, instance after instance, where we're having the staff come to us and our instructors are saying, oh my gosh, dual enrollment students are blowing my traditional students out the water, right? Test scores and grades and just the ability to manage, an online environment. I mean, our kids are tech savvy, right? So they are coming up with different ways to present that information. And I'm now getting more and more people going, can I get more dual enrollment students and less on-campus students? Because I love those kids, right? And so, having that and sharing those moments and those emails out with all the staff that's involved, all the successes that we're seeing, students that are part of the dual enrollment program and then end up getting admitted to the university. Like, we share all that communication out, not only with our district partners, but also with our internal partners, right? Disability Resource Office, Career Center, the Office of the Registrar, everybody that at any point touches a dual enrollment student gets the information to celebrate the students. And so slowly that, dual enrollment is no longer this thing that happens across campus that nobody knows and they're on the third floor of some building. It is now part of something that we all do as a university. So that's, it takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of communication. But we are happy that we are able to do some of that even from an online, perspective and at a distance.
That's wonderful. And it's so important that you celebrate those successes and share those. And you've turned the corner, it sounds like,
absolutely,
at university. So that's great.
Mm-hmm.
Well, now let's ask Michael and Matt for the same thing. How are you supporting and growing dual enrollment at your high schools? And that's both in terms of your students and your parents and your staff. So Matt, how about going first?
Sure. So I will share that one of the neat things that happens when you're at a school for a while, and I've been here for 10 years, is that success begins to breed success. And so, what we're seeing is that, especially among our first generation college students, that our school is not just an on-ramp to the dual enrollment platforms, an on-ramp to associate's degrees or CTE credentials, but it's an on-ramp for families and for children to aspire for education to actually open doors for them that might previously have been closed. And so I think that that's really just something that I can't emphasize enough, is that, one of the way you grow programs is by creating something successful that people want to be a part of and that they can see themselves in. So with that, like, there are a few ingredients I think that are super helpful in doing that. I think first is you have to give people hope. Like, they have to have some kind of reason, some sense of purpose. Why am I doing this in the first place? And if you can tap into that, like, sense of purpose, and even have your current students help to narrate, like, why am I taking these classes and why am I taking this degree? Like, let me tell you, as a super senior who's about to graduate and go to UNC Chapel Hill or UNCG or A&T, let me tell you why I did this in the first place, because I know my why. And then share that with other folks earlier on and get them thinking about and articulating, like, what is my reason for wanting to do this? Is it just because cousin Jimmy did it? Or is it because I myself, see myself, on this on-ramp in a plane about to take off? So I think that giving folks hope and inspiration is really important. And someone needs to be the moral cheerleader of your school. Somebody needs to be out there talking about the whole purpose for what we do and why we do it, and how, like, we have students that are evidence of our success, and that you can be like these folks or you can be like yourself. I will share with you that, like, our school motto is only 5 words. It's be yourself, leave completely changed. It's a validation of, like, who you are and where you come from. And also, like, education is the pathway to you, transforming perhaps your aspirations for the future. So I want to emphasize that hope piece and that inspiration piece, because that goes to your previous question about culture. It also goes to, like, how do you grow programs? People are attracted to things that they think they can be successful in. The second piece is you need to have a plan for folks. And that plan can be a little bit like those old books we used to read, the choose your own adventure books. I don't know if you guys ever read those, but you start out on page 1 and everybody starts out on page 1. But at the end of chapter 1, you can either jump to page 12 or page 18 or page 23, and your adventure starts to unfold. But you have to have a plan for folks that is differentiated, that has supports in place, so that every student feels like that their reason for being there is personal, and then the plan that's in place for them is also personal. That's super important, so that, you keep folks. You don't just want people to start your program, you want them to stay in your program, you want them to finish, and you want them to to leave with a credential that opens up some other door for them. The more you do that, the more it creates pathways of opportunity for everyone. The rising tide lifts all boats. We've seen a tremendous number of increase in our Hispanic families who are looking at our school and they're realizing, they're translating all of their materials into Spanish because they're trying to speak to us. They're having translators at our family nights and at our public events because they're speaking to our family. This is a school where my child speaks English, but I may not. And I'm not trying to characterize this with a broad brush, but we do have a lot of our first generation Spanish speaking students who also are fluent in English, but their parents may not be. So it's important that these kids get tons of support. And then what we found is that as a lot of our Hispanic families, build a relationship with our school, guess what? They talk to each other. Our African-American families talk to each other. Our middle income families, they talk to each other. And so you get these kind of conversations where, at family reunions and at church and at the dinner table, you've got word of mouth. And you talk to any business person about one of the most powerful ways of building your brand. Word of mouth is it. That is where it's at. More powerful than online marketing, more powerful than billboards. And so I would really encourage folks to think about, like, where's the energy at our school? Who is leading the cheerleading? What's our brand? Do we help kids to articulate their reasons for being here? And do we have like this kind of momentum where, like, our current successes help to breed future successes? Hope, aspiration, consistency, all of that super important to trying to build these successful programs where, kids can look at it from the outside and say, I can see myself in that, and I want to take the leap and give it a try.
Great. The great advice there. Thank you, Matt. How about Michael? You want to add on to that?
Certainly. I think one of the things we're starting to see is students and families together are becoming very savvy consumers. And so we're getting a lot of questions about what makes the most sense. And so that gives us the opportunity to say, tell us more about what you're thinking about down the road. And then we can start working backwards to create a schedule that meets high school graduation requirements and, in some cases, college graduation requirements as well. And I'm increasingly impressed with the number of students and families from all of our demographic backgrounds who are coming in and asking these questions. And I think Matt brings up a huge point, that culture and word of mouth, and then making sure that you're finding different ways to meet some of those people, to have conversations, really helps a lot. And then that also helps us get a chance to have, I know one of the questions was the traditional AP versus dual enrollment debate about what makes the most sense. We've done a lot of research in our district with a lot of taking the top 10 or 15 schools that our students apply to and then end up attending, and identifying what makes the most sense for a STEM education, what makes most sense for students who are going into liberal arts, what makes the most sense, and then communicating that and saying, definitely 4 years of math. If you're choosing to go to the College of Science and Engineering at the University of Minnesota Twin Cities, you are going to want to take some AP courses, because those are what transfer when you get a score high enough to get you credit. That's when we've seen parents step in and say, I don't think you need that additional pressure of taking an AP exam for this. I am A-okay with you taking the concurrent enrollment version, which is a college level, and then getting the credit, which could be used potentially as an elective credit, even if you have to take that course again at the University of Minnesota. So it's building some of those different options and different ways of seeing things. But then we did a ton of work at the outset of building our program to make sure that those students who are considered in the academic middle are able to participate. And that's what opened some doors to a lot of students who, were really proud at graduation to say they've earned more credits than anyone in their family has, and they haven't even, left high school yet. And that's really rewarding. And then that's kind of what people start to hear. But then you have to really dig in and draw out some of those students who are participating in different programs in different ways and saying, just because your heart's set at this moment on going into welding doesn't mean you don't, challenge yourself to do some of these things academically, because we can help you get out of college faster so that you can earn welding degree as quick as you can go.
Yes. Excellent advice there. So I'm going to move us to some of the questions that we've had in the chat here. And thank you so much, Michael, for talking about the AP versus dual enrollment question there. But I think the remediation question, how do you help kids not get caught into that cycle of being stuck in some type of remediation? Do you have any systems along the way, scaffolds that help kids? If you could talk about that, that would be wonderful. It sounded like, Jennifer, you had, and Lisa, that you had some ways that you monitor how kids are doing. And so you could reach out to the kids directly and to the instructors. So that's open to any of you for a comment.
I'd be happy to jump on that question if that's okay. As a high school principal, I think an awful lot about this issue of making sure that we're not just filling holes and buckets, but we're building something very positive. So many high schools across the state are on a block schedule, and that block schedule means that kids on the high school level take classes at a semester schedule rather than year long. And that works in a lot of ways for a lot of courses, but when it comes to math, block schedules are not great for math. You can take a math class in fall semester of your freshman year, and you might not take math again until fall semester of your sophomore year. And in that model, you may go 8 months without math. And so we give you a semester of math, and then you go for 8 months without it. Or we give you a semester of math, and then you go for another semester without it. So year-long models are better for math and math comprehension because there are fewer gaps. What we've done at our school is we've built in some foundation classes so that even though we are on a block schedule, we have foundations of math 1, foundations of math 2, foundations of math 3. We have some accelerated math. And so what that means is one, students who are on their way to taking math 171 at the community college, they don't ever have a semester at my school where they're not taking math. And what we have seen from the time I became principal in 2014, where we had a fair amount of students that were really struggling with math 171, we've seen that a lot of our students now, not a lot, all of our students are ready for math 171, 100% enter math 171, ready for that with no need for remediation, because we have done the backwards planning work to make sure that in 9th and 10th and 11th grades that they are, that their academic deficits are shored up. But even more importantly, we've got a lot of students who have so much math competency now that they're moving on to math 172, which puts them on track for the associate's degree. So I would say that, one of the things that is really important for folks that are looking at, how do I help kids to get into math 171, or how do I help them to qualify for that? And also, English 111 and Bio 110, you need to be looking at what are you doing in 9th grade? What are you doing in 9th grade and in 10th grade to make sure that you're recognizing the gaps, not just student learning gaps, but gaps in time where they have no instruction at all in certain content areas. I'll also share, just as a fringe benefit, that we have seen massive dividends on this model when it comes to the ACT, because it means that every student at our school who are taking the ACT, which was just administered yesterday, I know I was stuck in a room for 4 hours looking at my juniors, and I'm personally responsible for ACT preparation at our school. But we've seen that 22, that college ready benchmark in the math subtest for 22, we fly right past that. We're doing so much better at that because our students just have more math muscle than they used to because of the way we've restructured math. And so you guys know that even though we've been test optional for several years in the post-COVID environment, I think that test optional status is going to be going away for a lot of colleges. And you also know that a lot of scholarships really require you to have a baseline ACT just to qualify to apply for those scholarships or for financial aid. So I mean, as much as I may not like standardized testing at times, I don't discount the fact that it's part of the game, and we see major dividends for backwards planning our math to support both Math 171 and the ACT.
Yes. Thank you. And Matt, there's a question for you in the Q&A, not in the chat, that gets specific on your courses that you offer. So if you could answer that. And I think we're going to see the same thing in writing. Just in working with our high schools around Indiana this past month, meeting with a lot of them, math has always been an issue and trying to get people caught up, but writing is surfacing again. And so I think we're going to have to backward map a lot of writing and vertical articulation from middle school to high school to help with that as well. Other question, we've put our, for those of you not looking at the chat, we've also been putting our emails in there so you can contact us if you have questions for specific people on the panel. And so we only have 4 minutes here to wind up. Does anyone have a burning question for us? I did see one in there about staffing shortages. I know that's been true for our higher ed partners in terms of keeping those college or connection coaches or transition advisors, finding good people to do that and stick with it is a challenge, I think, for everybody. I don't want you to feel you're alone in that. So
Definitely.
Panelists, let's each go around and say one last comment in terms of dual enrollment and encouraging folks in this arena. So Jennifer, would you start?
Happy to. I think at the end of the day, it can sometimes be a little overwhelming to think about how do you build something? How do you start something? I really encourage those of you in the higher ed side of things to go to your department at your school and ask each of your departments, why are we not doing something college dual enrolled related in your academic area? If you have any that are lacking, we've been able to start some really new and creative programs. Just me asking the question of why aren't we? Sometimes there's a good reason why we're not, but most of the time it's just because nobody thought to do it. So we've been able to build some really good and fun things that way. And on the high school side, I think also being creative with articulation agreements with your partners. Those are two things that we've done at Gaston College and that we are still continuing to do. I'm not going to say we're an expert, but we have done a lot of really exciting things on those two fronts. And I think there's a lot more to come. So I really encourage those two things.
Thank you. Who'd like to go next of the group? I'm going to have Lisa in. Okay. Lisa?
Yeah, I would just like to emphasize, that it's a partnership, right? We at the post-secondary level want your students to succeed just as much as you do. And so ensuring that that it is understood and reiterated to the students and to the families, we all are in it for the success of the students. So if we can all work under that umbrella together, we can help the students be successful and have it be a good experience for them.
Thank you. How about Michael?
I see that some of the questions that I was trying to answer are about kind of how to continue to promote or show that the impact. And I recommended research, but and then Lisa says partnership, as Jennifer said, and that's incredibly important. One example I'd like to share is that we meet, our district administration meets with our college administration. So the president, vice president, and several others, and our superintendent, associate superintendents, and me and some others. And we learn about what's currently going on at the college level as far as challenges, opportunities, goals they're working towards. And we share a lot of what we're working towards. And 9 times out of 10, a lot of them are in alignment. And so then it makes a lot of sense just to kind of share what's happening, but then also saying, okay, we'll make sure to let our high schools and our students know about new programming offered at the college, or, they'll go back at the college level and say, hey, wow, this is the average score of the ACT for these students. And so that tends to then promote and say, wow, like these kids are ready to engage at this level and stuff like that.
Okay.
So that's been really helpful.
Good. And Matt, you want to take us to the end?
Yeah, I'd just like to just generally say that sometimes we look at kids in middle school and even their first and second years of high school. And sometimes without meaning to, we apply unconscious biases, and we sometimes don't see in kids the potential that they have. Sometimes kids need a reset. Sometimes they need someone to believe in them. Sometimes they need to show them that something can be done. And I would say that there's a very large group of students out there, kids age 16 to 24. We call them disconnected youth. They're folks that are not connected with a system of education, and they're also kids that are not connected with the system of employment. They're just out there floating. And I think it's a really ripe opportunity, these folks that are disconnected youth, age 16 to 24, to dig in and honestly do some empathy interviews with those folks and find out, where did we miss you along the way? How did we not get you connected to your local community college or to a dual enrollment program? How did you get out of high school without, taking a welding class or an HVAC class or a carpentry class? Because I think there's going to be some truth in those empathy interviews and in those conversations that is actionable. But I don't think that you get to that unless you ask the right questions of the right people. And so I think that there's leadership that matters across institutions. I think there's work that can be done at high schools and community colleges. I would just maybe like to challenge everyone to think a little bit about those disconnected youth, and to think some about, how did we miss them? And then what more could we do for the folks that are coming up so that we don't miss them again? Like, let's learn from the lessons right in front of us.
Right. Keep our eyes open for some of those things. Well, those of you in the audience, thank you so much for your time and attention. Please join me in thanking these terrific panelists. I've learned a lot today. I hope you have as well. And we hope you enjoy the rest of your conference. And thank you for being here.
Thank you.